One morning in September 2011, I was sound asleep when the phone rang, the actual phone right next to my bed. And it was my mom on the other end of the phone, and she said, "Have you heard?" And I thought, "Heard what? Did somebody die?" And she said, "No, go look at your TV." And what I saw when I turned it on was the World Trade Towers being hit by an airplane and crumbling and fire. And I thought, I'm a mom of 2 young kids. What in the world is going on? What do you do in a moment of crisis when you went to bed last night and the world seemed okay, and you wake up the next morning and everything's changed? You hear the word pandemic, and we're dealing with that now. So we want to give you a few thoughts. Here's what I did that morning. I did get my kids up out of bed. I did hear that school was canceled. And I was reminded of what they had learned at their kids' summer adventure. The verse out of Joshua 1:9. Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified, for the Lord your God is with you. And we carried that verse through that whole crisis. We'd like to offer you some ideas of verses of hope and peace from our Lord Jesus.
Philippians 4, 6, and 7 in the Compass Bible says, "Don't be anxious about things. Instead, pray. Pray about everything. He longs to hear your requests, so talk to God about your needs to be thankful. And know that the peace of God, a peace that is beyond any and all our human understanding, will stand watch over your hearts and minds in Jesus." Do not be anxious. That is so much easier to say than to live, especially in a time of crisis. During my life, I have experienced several circumstances that caused me to be anxious. Probably the most anxiety-producing was a tour of duty in Vietnam. I was a medic on an evacuation helicopter. Our job was to fly into combat, pick up the wounded. Receiving incoming fire was not an uncommon event. My job was to exit the helicopter, help load the wounded into the helicopter, making sure that the most seriously injured made it on board. Then I would provide medical care for the wounded en route to the hospital. As you might imagine, being in combat or heading into combat can be anxiety-producing, especially for a shy, introverted 21-year-old. I had grown up in the church. I should have known better. But I will admit that it was in desperation that I turned to God in prayer. He was faithful and gave me peace. I did not have a sense that He promised that I would survive the war, but that He was with me, and that was sufficient. One of the advantages of my 70 years is that I have many opportunities to be anxious. This has allowed me many opportunities to turn to Him in prayer, and many opportunities to receive His peace and to experience His faithfulness. If you are anxious, pray. Share your concerns with God. He is a faithful God. Share with your friends so they can pray for you and you can be praying for them. Know that you are not alone. God is with you and His comfort is available to you.
Those 2 kids of mine who were 5 and 8 on 9/11 are now in their 20s and engaged and getting married and moving on with their lives. And when I look back at that moment, it's not that it's faded. Some of you who remember it can even feel it when I describe that morning. But there's something about remembering. There's something about borrowing strength from the past that carries us with hope into the future. Where did God show up in the midst of the last crisis you or your family or your friends faced? Maybe you've never felt something like what you're going through right now, but others have. How can we find courage and hope and know that God is with us whatever we face? Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you. You can count on it.